I am here with Connie Moody, who is our director of voter. What's the official title? Voter registration and elections.
Voter registration and elections. It's a mouthful.
Got it. It is. How does one attain that goal? Is that something you sought out to do in your professional career, or did you just land into it?
No, I just landed into it, feet first. But it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I'll tell you, just in the time that I've been involved with you and with the politics and the elections in general, I have to say Greenwood has been as smooth as anything I've ever seen. So it seems like this was something you were born to do.
Well, thank you, Bill. That's a very big compliment.
Now, is this an appointed position? Is this something you apply for in the interview? How does that work?
It actually is an appointed position. I'm appointed by the Greenwood County Board of Voter Registration and Elections.
Now, let's talk about them for a second, because I walked in on you all the other day as we were doing candidate certifications. How do you get on that board? Where do they come from?
The board members are appointed by the governor.
And are they appointed in each county? Is that how it works? Okay.
It is. It's statewide, the same process. But they're appointed by the governor. They're normally someone who has been in the election process. They're familiar with election laws. They're familiar with the election processes and policies and such.
And how many are there normally if it's fully staffed?
It depends. Some counties have 7, some counties have 9. Some of your smaller counties have 5.
And what do we have?
County, we have 9.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yep. Hey, more hands on.
So if somebody was interested in getting on that board at some point in the future, they'd have to get to know the governor pretty well. Is that how that works?
Well, I mean, they can make contact with us, but it's normally people that's been in the election process, that's worked in the elections in Greenwood for a while. But they could get in touch with us. They could get in touch with the governor. Okay.
Well, what I was hoping to do today is share with you a lot of the questions that I've been asking and that people have been asking me, and sometimes I know the answers, sometimes I don't. Certainly saw your article in the Index Journal, and that's always very welcome and timely. Just for a refresher, we'll post a link to that here. But
thank you.
Just even in the last 24 hours, there has been some extraordinary confusion regarding the start date of in-person absentee balloting. So initially, the start date was October 5th, and that's what we were all marching towards. Then you go to SC Votes, and we see that the State Elections Commission has changed that date, and they published September 28th. So then we start promoting that.
To move forward with the September 28th date, just in order to give people more time to come in and vote absentee. So some counties can comply with it, some counties can't. You've got some counties that have special elections going on, which will impede on them honoring that date, but I don't see a problem with that in Greenwood County.
Well, then just yesterday, the state Senate, I don't know how closely you're tied into that. I have to imagine your ear is right there next to the radio listening to those proceedings. Yeah. But they say that the Senate has approved October 5th as the official start date. So are we no longer marching towards September 28th?
The state is marching towards September 28th.
Okay.
The Senate is in discussions. They can't really make an official decision until the House comes back into session.
Right. Yeah, I just say I'm watching these dates go back and forth, but for everybody, we're sticking with the 28th for now if they wish to start. Yes. And showing up in person, and that helps clarify things tremendously. Now, South Carolina has, I think at the last estimate, just over 3 million registered voters, and some predictors are saying that you could expect up to a third of those, over 1 million, partaking in the absentee process, whether it's by mail or in person. How do you feel heading into October, November in terms of being able to handle such a major shift from elections past?
It's going to be a huge undertaking. I think we're up for it. We're ready for it. It will be different than anything we've ever seen. If people do not feel comfortable going to the polls for the potential exposure to COVID, that's understandable. The governor has not reenacted the state of emergency clause on the absentee application. That may be forthcoming. I don't know at this point in time. But certainly people are welcome to come in here and vote absentee if they have a reason, a qualifying reason, or they're welcome to call and request an absentee by mail ballot. Or they can go to the post about it.
Now I know, right. Now I know that in some neighboring counties, in particular, I saw Spartanburg has moved the location of their in-person absentee balloting from their office to the Memorial Auditorium, because they're expecting a large amount of people. Do you feel that is going to happen here?
I've spoke with the state about that, and what they have told me is that we can't move it from our office. You can open a satellite office, but this office still has to be an absentee precinct. So if we open an office, then we would just have 2 offices. And we're looking at that ability. We're trying to gauge, and it's very hard to gauge at this point in time, we're trying to gauge what type of turnout we may have in the in-person absentee precinct. And we're actually going to be discussing that in further detail next week with the board.
All right. Well, as soon as any decisions are announced, we'll be right there ready to help publicize it and get that word out. I know that yesterday also in the Senate, they did not go forward with the number of recommendations that the state commissioner had suggested. One of them being Dropboxes, and I was a little confused by that because I thought we already have a Dropbox right outside of your office there on Monument Street. Is that going away?
Possibly. It really depends. There's some questions as to people dropping ballots in the box and the envelopes not being inspected prior to. So there's discussion that they may want the voters to bring them directly into the office. The reason we put the Dropbox in place in the first place was so voters would not stand in line. I've seen voters stand out there in a long line for an hour and a half just waiting to bring their absentee ballot in here for somebody to inspect the envelope and say that it's okay. So I really hope that does not go away because I've found that that's been a major advantage to keeping people from standing in line unnecessarily. So
I agree.
Wait and see on that one.
You bring up a point about wanting to have the individual, the voter, him or herself, bring their ballot. So that brings me to the topic of what they call ballot harvesting. Where people can collect the votes on somebody else's behalf and then drop them off, save that person a trip. And I think for the most part, people are doing it out of good intentions to help the voting process be easier. But I think in South Carolina, that is not allowed. Am I correct?
Well, when you say vote harvesting, you're talking about people picking up absentee ballots and bringing them back to the office and potentially tampering with them.
Right.
No, in South Carolina.
Well, the potential's there, right?
Yeah, if you return a ballot for anyone other than yourself, there's a form that has to be completed and attached to that ballot. Otherwise, the voter signs the ballot, and we do verify every signature of every ballot that comes through this office. If it does not match, then we go for the board. And we let the board make that determination. That ballot could be counted, that ballot could be thrown out because the signature does not match.
No, that clarifies things because we hear that people want to help their elderly grandmother and bring the vote in on their behalf. They can do so as long as they fill out the special form authorizing that person to do it.
That is correct. Okay. And that form does have to be attached.
For the June primary that was passed, and I had the absolute delight and pleasure of working in your group for the first time. And believe me, I was run ragged. That was a challenging day and so much fun. I logged several hundred miles in my car. I can only imagine. But back on that day, about 5 or 6 polling locations were changed, I think primarily to move them out of the retirement communities and into a school because of COVID and safety of the residents, et cetera.
And then later, the governor deemed that we could not, or no one could go into the nursing home. So it's a very good thing that we did move them when we did. But we did not feel in good conscience that we should expose the voters or the residents to the potential of getting the virus.
Right.
So move them
I
early.
know it may be a little early to predict, but do you sense any other polling changes coming up, or do you think that the June slate of locations is going to be what the November slate is going to look like?
The June slate will be identical to the November slate. We will not be using assisted living facilities for this election. We have also moved what we call the Grahams Glen precinct, which is at the Burton Center on 72-220. That location will be voting at the Civic Center, the old Civic location, which is at the Farmers Market.
So there was already a farmers market polling, so you're merging the two, right? Okay.
We're merging the two together.
That makes sense. They're right across the street from each other.
Yeah, that's a special needs facility, and they fall pretty much in the same category as assisted living. So I felt it was best to move that location.
What's the best way people can be informed, and check prior to the election of what their location is, or any other late-breaking changes?
You can go to scvotes.org and look up your polling location. They can call the office. We can give them that information. Any changes will be published in the index, and we will pass that on to the radio stations. So we try to make sure everybody is informed.
Yep. Good.
Of course, we'll let you know, and you can pass it on.
Be more than thrilled to help with that. As a political party, what are some of the guidelines and practices that our members need to watch out for as they show up to, cast their vote, et cetera? What are the rules that we have to live by in terms of distances or signs or shirts or buttons or any of that sort? But we don't want to get into trouble. So what do we need to know?
Yes. You cannot wear anything political. You can't wear a political pin, a political hat, a political T-shirt inside of a polling location. It has to be totally nonpartisan. Outside of the polling location, that is a different story. Once you step over the threshold, it is okay to shake hands, wear badges, wear shirts, kiss babies. I wouldn't advise that at this point in time, but all of that is acceptable outside of the polling location. Now,
so even if I walked into a polling location, I just happened to have my vote bill cap on,
has to come off.
They would make me take that off before I could go any further. Okay.
Yes. But outside, as I said, is a different story.
Right.
Now, you still cannot have political signs within 200 foot of the precinct entry door, or you cannot hand out political literature within 200 foot of the precinct entry door. Those are the exceptions.
Good. Let's wrap up by talking about poll workers for a minute. What are the different ways that people can participate and do some civil service working within your group on Election Day?
Well, if they want to be a poll worker, they can make contact with us by phone. They can send us an email at vote.greenwood@elections.sc.gov. We'll send them an application. Those are the best ways to get in touch with us to be a poll worker.
And to be a poll worker means you're sitting at the poll site, you're engaging with the voters, helping them through the process, you're checking them in, you're giving them a little guidance on using the machines. Many will be using them for the first time in November, right?
Yes, there is a whole litany of different tasks that poll workers do. Some may be doing the election books, some may be operating the laptops, some may be assisting the voters, showing them how to insert their cards. So there's a lot of different roles that are played at the precinct level.
And I'm assuming there's training.
Oh, yes. And what the managers normally do is they assess the workers and say who's best at what. And some may be best doing the computers, some may be best doing the paper election books, some may be best assisting the voters. So it's really just up to the managers and the poll workers' potentials. I would like for anyone who qualifies to vote absentee by mail, if they would like to do so, to call us ASAP. The reason that we say that is the phones have been very, very busy this past week. They're getting busier as we go. As we get closer, they may not be able to get a line through. and we've got 7 rolling lines in this office, and we have been steady on them. So if somebody needs an absentee ballot, and you've got a lot of our population that really do need to vote by absentee, they may have a disability and can't get to the polls. They may have a compromised immune system, things of that nature. So if they do think that they need an absentee ballot, we ask that they please call as soon as possible. We are taking applications. We're filing them. As soon as the ballot's ready, I will get all those ballots in the mail. And at this point in time, we're over 3,100 applications that are back in this office. So if they would call as soon as possible, that would be great, just to make sure they do get their ballots sometime.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you'll see a lot of activism on that front all over. People. And then there's not time to do paperwork and get the ballots back, and yeah. So we just want to. That's the message we're echoing: is do it now. Don't rely on the post office. Don't rely on an overburdened staff. You have to take it into your own hands and get it through at this moment. And the sooner the better. And I think. And the rule in South Carolina is still the mail-in ballot has to be received by Election Day, right? Or the day prior to Election Day, which is it? No, it's election night by 7 p.m. As soon as those polls. So if there was a postal delay and that ballot arrives on November 4th, that's just a shame at that point. It's a shame. Unless it's a military ballot. Our UOCAVA ballots are a little different. So. Okay. That ballot by 10 o'clock a.m. the morning of the certification, it will still be counted. But that's only for the military ballots. The over 6. Okay. Well, that's great information. Again, thank you so much, Connie. This was awesome, as always, and I appreciate everything you and your staff does. If you need, I watch. Yeah, I watch what happens at other counties, and especially what happened in Georgia on that primary day. And just so grateful that you run a smooth ship, and we want to do everything we can to help keep it that way. It would be smoother if you were here with us. We're going to miss you. Really yeah. As I said, this election day, my attentions are going to be elsewhere for sure. I fully understand. All right. Well, thank you, Connie. Well, thank you. Take care. You too. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.